wishing to be done missing, but I guess this comes hand in hand with
One of the things that really clarifies a lot is to recognize at the beginning that education and training are very different things. You know, learning calculus is training. Learning to think using calculus is education. Learning a CAD program is training. Learning to design definitely requires education. Learning grammar and spelling is training. Learning to communicate requires education. In fact, it doesn't all break down that simply, but in many cases, learning the parts is about training, but learning the synthesis, the whole, the wisdom, how it fits together requires education. So quite often in this country, for example, I believe that our, quote, education system is actually choking on a failed training system. And most of the focus on STEM is actually about training, and we have to get past that as fast as we can and get to post-STEM so that young people in the developed world will have a chance to be productive enough to offset what we consume. I believe that informed creative thinking is what it's all about, all three, all the time. The informed part of the triangle is really easy compared to the other two. Being creative requires a lot of education because you have to know yourself enough to trust your ability to be creative. Thinking is not just, you know, David Foster Wallace gave a famous graduation talk at Kenyon College not long before he committed suicide. He was a very profound and provocative thinker, but the thrust of that graduation talk was that in college you should not just learn to think, you should learn to control what you think about. So getting people to think about what they should think about is a meta level of that corner. The creative part, you know, I believe that when you're a student, you have a shot at being in a protected environment so that you can try to be creative and be successful enough times that when you actually start in a professional life or the rest of your life, you have a creative self-image that's robust enough to withstand several your baby is uglies, because that will happen. So if you're going to be a creative person, you have to be a tough creative person. So we're buried in the becoming informed corner when the other two corners are really, really important. And now, people have to be responsible and know that they're responsible for training themselves. And there was a time when if you knew some things, you could have a whole career. And then, no, that's not enough. You have to know things and be able to solve some problems. Oh, that's not enough. You have to know things, be able to solve problems creatively because they've gotten harder. Oh, that's not enough. You've got to be able to communicate and ethically work with groups that are multidisciplinary and work on really hard problems. So the number of layers that have been added to being a successful professional continues all the time. Informed doesn't get you to those other layers. Societies get the best of what they celebrate. And right now we're kind of drunk on celebrating a lot of the wrong things. But if we don't have to change society yet and we want to work on the education problem, let's just focus there. I believe that an advanced education system would outsource training to a modern, well-produced, coherent digital system that would replace the function of textbooks. The Khan Academy, Sal Khan has used the language of inverting or flipping the classroom. I agree. I wrote a chapter for a book 12 years ago in which I argued that we need to do that so that you use digital media that's highly produced for the commodity things. So you train yourself in calculus, and then when you get together with experts, you become educated about how to think using calculus. You and I right now are using our most precious resource, our time. We're human to human. So we shouldn't use this kind of stuff for training. We should do that on my phone while I'm commuting or whatever. I sit it on the screen and I have a system that's tailored to me. In the United States, 600,000 college freshmen take calculus every year. 42% fail. 250,000 fail remedial calculus in college. If you say that $2,000 is a reasonable price for that failure, which is very conservative, it's much higher than that at MIT for sure. That's $500 million. $500 million. Now, that's the cost of the movie Avatar. That's what the rumors say. 1,000 people for 4 years made that movie. They were all the best in their field. We've never done anything like that in, quote, education. If we did calculus with 1/10 of that, I believe we could cut that failure rate in half. If you look at the value, the present worth of a continuous stream of $500 million a year for one country, for one course, at one level, it's a huge number. At today's interest rates, the present worth of $500 million a year is essentially infinite. So as an investment in the culture, solving that problem is really worth doing. So I believe we should do it. And if we did it and we had 1 million users, they'd be getting better all the time. And Sal Khan is now doing this with the Khan Academy. He has some of his hedge fund friends that are doing the statistical analysis to learn what works and what doesn't. We must do that. If I were Woodie Flowers and I wanted to study differential equations, and I had taken this new media learning style evaluation quiz that would be part of the front end of this that I would have done early in my life, I would know that I really don't like this symbolic manipulation math stuff, and I really need I have to have some gravitas, and I'm also ADHD and I don't pay attention, so I'm going to pull down differential equations, what I want to study, and the next menu is going to be, I want to study it in the context of mechanical engineering because that's what I want to be. And the next is, I want it to poke me every 5 minutes because I know I'm not going to want to pay attention. So it's going to have to ask me a question to check in on, make sure I'm paying attention. And I also know that, I don't know, just to try it out, I want to use this old style thing and I want to do it in lecture format. So then I have to pick the voice. I need some emphasis, so I want Walter Cronkite's voice, because that'll make me pay attention. But I think because she's got this absolutely beautiful midsection, I think Lady Gaga ought to be the visual avatar for my differential equations course. We know how to do all that. We could do really elegant things. And if we did that and we got people's attention and people were empowered to go train themselves ad hoc, I need to know Kalman filter theory. I'm an engineer, I go learn that. That works. Then you come back with your colleagues and you learn what really applying a Kalman filter to this new robotic system really means. And that's probably education. So train yourself, spend time with your colleagues in maybe a social setting, and with experts to become educated. And it's that piece, the education piece, that I believe is the biggest challenge for students in the developed world. In this new media world, why wouldn't we have Disney do the story of calculus, and Pixar do the animations, and Electronic Arts do the testing for the gaming, and Apple do the interface, and Google do the backbone. And we have a whole bunch of deep expertise that we're not yet using. And I believe the university system could be the coordinating body that brings that all together. We don't, in commodity courses, the place that we're failing most tragically now, we don't need elegant college professors for the content. We need some good, careful cognitive thought about the pedagogy and the path and to make sure it's consistent. But we need production value and coherence. E.O. Wilson's book, Life on Earth, is a beautiful example of what can happen. The first 2 chapters are out now and they're available for the iPad through the iBook store. He has members of his team one of them is the MacArthur Prize winning animator that did a major part of The Inner Life of the Cell, which is a beautiful, beautiful animation. He sent most of his team to Hollywood. They're off in Africa with very elegant camera gear doing videography and stuff. And the textbook is an interactive media thing. It's got built-in movies, it's got things you can touch and move and look at the other side of, et cetera. We need to do that. It's obvious that we need to do that. And whoever does it first and uses the feedback to make it better will probably own that space, because no one will ever be able to catch up if you keep getting better every day. When I was young, I had a great pair of mentors, but my mentor for engineering was my father, who was a welder, general repair guy, terrible businessman. We were absolutely dirt poor. I grew up in a very small town in Louisiana, and we never owned a home. And I didn't have a car to date in high school, so I built a hot rod roadster so that I had a way to invite girls out. And it was a hillbilly hot rod roadster, but it was the fastest, most dangerous thing in town. And I was lucky to have survived that. But when I became an engineering student, all those equations meant something to me, because I actually had some multi-dimensional impression about what steel was like and what engines were and things of that sort. I brought to the symbolic representation of engineering a lot of understanding that was in different parts of my brain and different parts of my body. So when I started teaching at MIT while I was a graduate student, I was very interested in making sure that students had done something with their hands so that devices had more meaning, that they connected with Mother Nature. Mother Nature is quite wonderful in that she applies all of her rules all the time. And she gives you very unvarnished feedback. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. So it's a great...
Keep on wishing to be done missing, but I guess this comes hand in hand with wanting it all. I need sleep, killed all the sheep.